G'day, I'm Mary Lou Stevens, author of The Last of the Apple Blossom. This novel is set in the orchards of the Huon Valley. It's a love song to a way of life long gone, erased by natural and economic woes. It follows the lives of two friends on neighbouring orchards from the day of the devastating 1967 bushfires through the collapse of the apple industry when England joined the common market, and into the era of the new settlers, or hippies, who flocked to the area in the 1970s. It's a story of strong women, of family, orchard and country life, of love, secrets and betrayals, small town gossip and worldwide events, all coming together to create a big, colourful and very Australian tapestry. You'll find it under historical fiction on Australian Book Lovers.
Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you for joining us once again for the Australian Book Lovers podcast. Our mission, as always, is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature spanning a whole range of genres to book lovers all around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I am Darren Kazanko, your science fiction and horror author, avid reader, and one of your hosts and co-founder of Australian Book Lovers, coming to you today from Corner Country.
And I'm Veronica Strachan, fantasy, memoir and picture book writer, reader, and your other co-founder and host, coming to you today from Woiwurrung country, which is Wurundjeri in Victoria. So here we are with episode 28, which is pretty amazing, Darren.
Yes. Well, technically still in the nightclub era, but then starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with knocking back the office and maybe just kicking back with some popcorn and a movie.
Oh, there you go. Well, see,
and a good book, of course.
Do remember my late 20s. I had my first child late 20s, so that was Cassie, who is now, of course, past that age herself, I'll just say, and a fabulous digital designer of all my beautiful covers on my books. So, yeah. That's good.
and not to mention a huge help with all of our wonderful little animal logos.
That's exactly right. So we've got Steve to thank for the lovely animals, and Cassie does all the words and the shield and all those kind of things. So, yeah, no, we're very indebted to her. So lucky I had her in my late 20s.
And fingers crossed that in a very near future episode, of course, and I'm throwing this out there unscripted, of course, we're hoping that yourself and Cassie will become part of an interview for your upcoming children's book release.
Yes, that is fantastic. We have Chickabella 3. So this is actually a bit exciting. It will be my first trilogy, which is not the trilogy I imagined that I would have when I started writing my first fantasy, the Oka Dragon, which was Opal Dreaming, and the way we got in contact, and you and I started this friendship that's resulted in Australian Book Lovers.
It has indeed.
But Chickabella, which are really the story of the chickens in my backyard. Yeah, and that was in memory of my sister Mary, who was a kindergarten teacher, and she just told the best stories. And unfortunately, we lost her to breast cancer a few years back. And just so in her memory, we did Chickabella and the Rainbow Magic, and then Chickabella Counts to 10, and the third and final of the trilogy is Chickabella Shapes Up. So yeah, it's lovely. And Cassie has just absolutely captured the chickens. I won't say they have silly faces, but they have kind of, I don't know if you've ever watched Chicken Run, that animation.
Oh, I know what the movie you're talking about, the show.
It is hilarious. And one of them who says, my life passed before my eyes. It was really boring. So I can't remember which chicken it was, but it was very good. But, the Chickabella has just that kind of quizzical, the world is very complicated, but I'm a simple girl kind of look on her face. So, yeah. She's done a great job.
Well, I mean, you're talking to a guy who knows next to nothing about chickens. So whenever somebody mentions the word chicken, I've got that archetypal chicken in my head, which is your just normal barn chicken, I suppose. And of course, I saw a photo of one of your new chickens that you added, and
Yes.
completely different to what I imagined. They look like some exotic bird.
They are. They're Chinese silkies, and that's what originally started Chickabella too. So we had one little chick born whose name was Chickabella. She was a white silky, and they have these fantastic 70s style hairdos where the top of their heads are all fluffy, but they're all quite individual. None of them look the same. They're not like a standard. And so each of the chicks in Chickabella has a completely different hairdo, and that distinguishes them as well. So yeah, we got those from the Chinese silkies. But yes, the latest two into the flock are Zeb and Tig, because zebra and tiger, of course, one's brown with little black stripes and the other one is white with little white stripes. So yeah, sometimes you run out of names for chickens because we have had a number over the years, but they are gorgeous. Love them in my backyard. They spend all their time ruining my garden, but yeah, what the heck.
Yeah, well, maybe you should convince Cassie to do sorry, that's always a tongue twister for me, caricatures of all the chooks, give them each a name, and then I think moving forward you should have colouring in book, but also collector cards.
Collector cards. Oh, wow.
Like baseball cards, only Chickabella cards.
Chickabella cards, there you go. We do have the T-shirts, because Cassie's is a digital artist for more than Chickabella, of course. She does lots of great stuff with Torchwood and Doctor Who and lots of Dungeons and Dragons characters, and people often get her to draw their character for them. And then, of course, she's on Redbubble, so you can get them on cups and T-shirts and stickers and all those kind of things. So we have had a number of Chickabella T-shirts, and I've used those for prizes as well. The little kids love getting their favourite colour chicken on their T-shirt. So, yeah, it is good fun.
Super cool. And, of course, for all the listeners out there, if you are ready to jump into the adventures of Chickabella, then Part 1 and 2 and Part 3 very shortly. Will be at the time of this when this is released, because it is imminent, of course, under our children's genre on the Australian Book Lovers website. Yeah. So now you can grab the whole trilogy. And if you write in and twist Veronica's arm, you may even be able to organise a T-shirt.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, on that note, I mean, obviously, the
I will say one more thing.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I got a beautiful photo from Ian's uncle who lives in England. He's 102.
Wow.
And he sent us a photo of him with the two Chickabella books. He'd gone and bought them from, I guess, Amazon UK or whatever, and he sent a photo that he had the book. And that was just so wonderful that he'd gone and bought those and sent us the photo proof that he was supporting our writing journey. And because Cassie was the last one to go over and she visited him as well. But yeah, 102, that's pretty good. He still lives on his own.
That's
fantastic.
Amazing.
Writes a fabulous letter and sent us a photo of Chickabella. So that was really good.
Yeah, that must have felt very cool seeing that.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Chickabella Travels the World. Maybe that's episode 4.
Oh, no, that's enough, Chickabella.
You got Chickabella, it travels the world. Then you can have Chickabella in space.
Darren, stop now.
But I was going to say before, unlike the Chicken Run or whatever that movie was, where it said life flash past and it was boring. It sounds like the chooks on your property ads and the inspiration from Chickabella. Life is far from boring.
Oh yeah, they get it's such an easy life for them. They've got a huge garden. They've got water. They eat the dogs' biscuits if they can get them. They sneak that, and we've got forest and logs for them, and they jump on the trees and they try and escape to the front yard, and worms, veggie patch, the lot. It's a good life.
Well, it sounds like a chicken party, which is what we call when we travel out bush where we from our location here on the coast. We drive across the Adelaide Hills, and there's a property that we pass. It's a huge farm, and they have it's free range eggs, or free range chickens, I suppose. And they've got this huge setup in the middle of this massive field of chicken feed and ramps and everything. And the chickens just go crazy. They've got like maybe, just the size of 2 ovals, I suppose. And they just run riot and they just have parties. And so we're always laughing at chicken party when we go past. But it was surprising because they've got looks like a shed and a sign saying cold drinks and eggs. So we stop and get some, and of course there's a Coke machine, but then next to that's a vending machine with the eggs. You actually get cartons of these fresh free-range eggs through a vending machine, which I thought was pretty cool. I haven't seen that before. But nonetheless, I'm sure all those chickens are very modern as well and very curious, and I'm sure they would love to hear some news.
They certainly would. All right, some lovely news to talk about today. One of the things I wanted to remind our readers of is the campaign called Australia Reads. Now, I'm an ambassador for Australia Reads, and there's lots of bits and pieces that will go on. And Australia Reads is about reading more books more often. And there's going to be a reading hour, which is hopefully a nationwide thing happening, and it's Tuesday the 14th of September. So 200 authors and illustrators are going to, get organised and do a reading hour on Tuesday the 14th of September this year, 2021. So keep your eye out. Have a look at the website. There's lots of ways to get involved. There's things for school kids. You can do your own reading art, all of those kind of things. And we'll see if we can try and get the lady from Australia Reads on to have a little bit of a chat about it so we can get a few more details. But there's lots of good things happening there. So australiareads.org.au and have a look. And there, some of the children's book especially have come out with special edition for Australia Reads, and you can get them super cheap. So there's some fantastic school books there, which are brilliant. So that's a little bit of news for you.
That'll be such a beautifully bizarre moment in time, wouldn't it? If you looked around and the clock struck whatever the hour, maybe 2:00, and everyone just became silent and started reading.
Yes, it would be brilliant. Yeah, I'm not sure quite how the details are going, but because I've got to get myself organised for that, it is sneaking up on us, so that's really good. Now, the second thing I wanted to mention was that one of my writer friends, Deb Hannagan, who is from up in Broome in WA, she is a co-presenter on a little podcast called Deadly Literacy. So she, and this is her second season, so she and her colleague Jackie McKenzie, they combine a First Nations perspective with applied linguistics, because that's Deb's specialty, and she's doing a master's or a PhD. She'll probably kill me. I think it's a PhD. Yes. But they talk about all things early literacy. So you can jump onto SoundCloud, and if you look up SoundCloud, you can look up just Deadly Literacy, but you can and see they've got a whole season, and now they're up to season 2, and it's on Radio Gulari, so GOOLARI, which is run by First Nations up in Broome, which is fantastic. So, and there's lots of other bits and pieces on Radio Gulari too, which is they've got Deadly Justice, lots of chats going on. But yes, Deadly Literacy is a really good one for those early readers. And it's great because I've got the kids doing some book reviews, and I know you're going to give us some spotlights. But yeah, it's good fun listening to the kids talk about their books, which is great. So Deadly Literacy, yeah.
Well, I like the name.
Yeah, it's really good. And Jackie in particular talks about, for her, what the meaning, she is an Indigenous woman, and she talks about the meaning of country for her. And as I continue to try and educate myself about, the history and the culture and the fantastic people that we live with and the country that we live on, it's just, more and more, I'm just amazed at the connection that Indigenous people have with country and how integral they are to looking after country. So yeah, fantastic. And finally, I thought I'd give just a little bit, this is kind of for writers and readers. So this is from one of the frequently asked questions on the Australian Society of Authors, and it's under the FAQs on earning a living as an author or illustrator. And one of the things that authors and illustrators can do is public speaking at events, so they can go to school and or do library appearances and that kind of things. And so I thought this was a kind of a good newsy thing for both authors and readers and illustrators as well. And I know lots of, I'm going to say, the more famous children's authors already do this kind of work, and I know some of them visit schools here up around in the Macedon Ranges. But if you're a school or if you're a group book club, it doesn't have to be children's book. If you've got a book club, why not invite the author to drop in and
That's a heaps good idea.
Yeah, share, their understanding of the book, because some books are particularly suitable, I guess, for book clubs where there's particular questions and there's deep messages, and that's kind of, this is my segue into the writer that we interviewed, Tabitha Bird, and the books that she has. Leave that for later. But if you run a book club, if you've got a group that meets on a regular basis, why not think of inviting an author to speak, or an illustrator to show you their illustrations or take you through some drawing classes? So go to the Australian Society of Authors and you can find, and authors, go there and register yourself so that you've got some details. And there's lots of speaker bureaus who kind of, manage that kind of work. And you can do some practicing. But go along and think about hiring an author or an illustrator to speak at school or library or a book club. Or just any club.
Yeah, that's just right. And it's all about thinking outside the square, isn't it? And just, a little bit of change, a little bit of adventure can inject a whole new level of enthusiasm in your club. And obviously it brings a whole lot of positive energy to an author too, if they suddenly get an invitation to come and discuss or read. And I think that website is such a beautifully practical one-stop shop, isn't it?
Yes,
and really
so
should
much
be your first
information
shop
there.
Stop as an author when you're looking to, if you wake up with your coffee and go, right, what's a good approach to, turn my role into a more professional one? That has to be your first stop, really.
Yeah, and as we would have heard in the last episode, everything that Olivia told us about the Australian Society of Authors, all good, and so much more to come. They're great advocates, they really are.
Absolutely.
What's happening on the website, Darren?
Yes, well, I thought, as per previous episodes, and the fun part for me is highlighting or spotlighting some of the unbelievably cool titles that we've got listed on the Australian Book Lovers website, thanks to unbelievably cool authors that have decided to trust us with listing their beautiful books. So this is the fun part. And really, this is ultimately, at the end of the day, what the website's all about. And that is beautiful, magical, awesome books and the opportunity for book lovers out there to discover brand new authors, brand new genres, perhaps even. But most important of all, fantastic stories. And, when it comes to memoirs, fantastic biographies and whatever it might be, as long as it's... the opportunity to support a great Australian author and a great Australian artist and ignite your imagination. So a couple of titles I'd like to highlight today for book-loving listeners out there, in case you haven't heard of these. The first one is, and I know we had a bit of a chat with Annika regarding, I believe you mentioned this title in the conversation we had with the lovely Annika, and that is Peter Lyer's Rating Normal by author Anna Whateley.
Yes. Anna Whateley, though. That's a tricky one to
Whateley.
say. Yeah.
So I apologise, Anna. So Peter Lyer's Rating Normal by Anna Whateley. And this you can find under our contemporary genre page, which is with our funky dolphin sipping a latte with some sunglasses.
Yep.
And the synopsis reads as follows. At 16, neurodivergent Peter Lyer is a success story of social training. That is, until she finds herself on a school trip and falling in love with the new girl. Peter will need to decide which rules to keep and which rules to break. I'm Peter Lyer, I mumble. Look people in the eye if you can, at least when you greet them. I try, but it's hard when she's smiling so big and leaning in. Peter Lyer is far from typical. The world she lives in isn't designed for the way her mind works. But when she follows her therapist's rules for normal behaviour, she can almost fit in without attracting attention. When a new girl, Sam, starts at school, Peter's carefully structured routines start to crack. But on the school ski trip, with romance blooming and a newfound confidence, she starts to wonder if maybe she can have a normal life after all. When things fall apart, Peter must decide whether all the old rules still matter. Does she want a life less ordinary? Or should she keep her rating normal? A moving and joyful Own Voices debut, and that is Peter Lies Rating Normal by Anna Whateley, under our contemporary genre.
It's a great book.
Yes, you've got a lot of praise for that book.
Yes, yeah, it's fantastic. And it really is such an education to read more than you normally read. So, as you know, my favourites are fantasy and sci-fi and a little bit of horror occasionally. So to read some contemporary stuff, and particularly about diverse characters, which is fantastic. So, Peter is neurodivergent. It's fantastic. Yeah, it just was such an eye-opener.
Well, hopefully there's listeners out there that can trust. Well, I know they will trust in your judgment, Veronica. So if you want to be just as blown away, please do go have a look. I'm sure you're not going to be disappointed. Absolutely. And of course, again, you'll be supporting an awesome Australian author.
Yes.
Now, sticking with contemporary for the moment, as far as contemporary genre, another book I'd like to highlight is the book is titled The Worry Front, and that is by author H.C. Guildfind. And quite interesting synopsis. It reads as follows. If she screamed, he wonders, would they hear her up there in the houses? If she ran, he wonders, could I catch her? And if I caught her, could I? He coughs again, furious. Would I? These unsettling short stories, which include the prize-winning novella Quarry, expose an anatomy of worry in its many guises, unease, fear, dread, and terror. Through a multitude of distinct voices, H.G. Guildfind's startling tales explore the absurd, macabre, surreal, and too real, whilst wrestling with the irrevocable acts, immutable facts, and relentless uncertainties that lie at the dark heart of every life. And that is The Worry Front by H.C. Guildfind, which you can locate under our contemporary fiction genre page.
Fantastic. What an interesting concept.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the cover is quite cool too. Sort of like I'd call it a hybrid between mathematics and geometry or geometrical shapes and swells. So, yeah, very alluring, I have to admit, and promises, I think, a little bit of magic behind the cover, absolutely. Now, the next one sounds like quite a journey to take, and this is actually going to be found under our biography section, or memoirs and biography. And this is titled Sex, Drugs and Meditation, a memoir by Australian author Mary Lou Stevens. Now, title like that, you have to be interested. So the actual description begins with a quote from none other than the Sydney Morning Herald, which were kind enough to announce that it was bracingly honest, funny and rewarding. This is a book you can't put down. So Sex, Drugs and Meditation, a memoir, reads as follows. Darkly funny and beautifully told, Sex, Drugs and Meditation is a tale for those of us who confuse being busy with being happy. The story of a woman who dared herself to stop talking and start living and loving. Determined to avoid more therapy and desperate to cope with an increasingly toxic work environment, Mary Lou signs up for a 10-day meditation retreat that requires total silence, endless hours of sitting cross-legged, and no dinner. For a woman who talks for a living, is rarely still and eats for comfort, this was never going to be an easy task. Sex, Drugs and Meditation is a tale of learning to sit still, shut up, and gain wisdom. Mary Lou must take the hardest path of all, to confront and overcome, once and for all, the darkness within. So, definitely sounds like an amazing ride, and of course it's a memoir too, which sometimes makes the ride even more fascinating, because there can be really vivid descriptions and emotions because the person telling the tale lived the tale. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, so that sounds like a real great read, and that of course is once again under our biographies, which is the cutest ever and coolest wombat appearing at
love wombats
in the mirror. Yeah, I love wombats. They rock. A wombat will be making an appearance in one of my future books, without a doubt. I don't know how, but I'm going to work it out.
Well, as long as it's not like Zachary Ashford's, he's got those terrible, and I shouldn't say that because I've heard that lots of people love his books, but he's got the killer koala. No, he's got the killer koala on his cover. Drop bears.
That's right, yes. And of course, and then you've got Alan Baxter's Killer Kangaroo.
Oh, yes.
Yes. No.
Why do people believe all our animals are ready to kill you? It's just not true.
It's the strangest thing, isn't it? I mean, besides spiders and I look the snakes, but I mean, you know, I can go for I just went for a huge walk at the time of recording just a few days ago. You know, a good hour-long walk into the middle of nowhere, hunting down a waterfall. There's nothing to kill me there. So, but you know, when I think about countries like North America where there's bears and you know,
and actually, that was something I saw on Twitter the other day. An Australian author was saying that she'd been out walking in, or she was in the US and had been camping, and she said she just couldn't understand why people consistently said, how could you go camping in Australia? Yeah, sure, we've got snakes and spiders and that. She said, but yeah, they've got bears and moose and all these things. That couldn't,
coyotes, bobcats.
Yes.
Yeah.
Way bigger than spiders and snakes, which you can get away from.
I mean, yes, you know, if you harass an emu, it may peck you pretty hard. And
cassowaries.
kangaroo.
Okay, cassowaries.
Cassowaries, yeah. But I mean, chances of seeing one of them. But yeah, no, kangaroos not going to just... Although, I suppose you could probably find videos of them boxing around.
Oh, yeah. And
in general...
If you have a go at them, they will have a go back. But yeah. All right, moving on. Have you got any more spotlights for us? I
do have a couple of quick ones. So, staying with our biography, and of course, once again, marked by our beautiful wombat, I've actually got a title called Two in a Top Hat, and that's by Australian author Jane Mitchell. This is really quite cool. So the description is, Jan and Ian Mitchell sailed their 25-foot yacht, Caprice, around the world between February 1974 and November 1977. Jan writes about seasickness, gales, learning to navigate, coping with strong currents, rigging failure at sea and repairs. There are also the joys of friendships with other cruising folk, visits to tropical paradises and a stay on an uninhabited island. And that is Two in a Top Hat. And actually, if you go to the biography page, you'll see that there's two other books by Jan Mitchell which are part of... So essentially, it's Two in a Top Hat is kind of the introduction to the journey. And there's also a book there which I may spotlight in the next one, which involves how she did another sailing trip with the family where she actually raised two sons whilst travelling the globe in a boat. Wow. So I suspect it's a bit of a short, very simple, I suppose, synopsis, but I have a feeling there's nothing simple or short within the pages because to spend 3+ years sailing the globe, that's the definition of adventure, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what a way to discover the human spirit.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, up until recently, she and her partner would go and spend 3 months sailing around Europe. So yeah, there is a whole community when they do that. I think they sailed all sorts of different places around Turkey and all sorts of interesting places, and just stop and chat with the people on the next boat and jump in and explore the place, but not so easy to do these days.
No. Fingers crossed it'll open up again, because it's definitely something that I'd like to do at some point in life.
Yeah.
That and fly a plane. Well, one thing at a time. I'll get a website going first. Then one day maybe you'll see me at the captain of my own ship sailing, but no, kayak's my
Start
boat.
with the kayaks.
Yeah, probably finish with a kayak too.
There you go. And look, I believe you had an inquiry about which sort of kayak you had. One of our listeners wrote in and asked a bit more information.
Enough to write. Yes, was wondering if I built my own kayak, and I wish I could say I could or did. But no.
Yeah.
But very, very kind gentleman who, really enjoyed Maria Frino's podcast or interview, so which is fantastic. So Maria, if you're listening to this one, you've got already got a fan out there that's written in, so that's great. And it was fantastic to hear from somebody who's enjoying the podcasts and and obviously is quite familiar with sea crafts by the sounds of it. So in fact, I just saw that he's rewritten, so hopefully find out a little bit more about him.
Yeah, very good.
Yes, yeah.
And now, if you want to chat to Darren or I, by all means, send us an email from the website or approach us on social media, anything like that. Happy to hear your feedback.
Yes, indeed. Yes, would always love to hear from anybody out there who loves books or is a writer or is just a supporter of Australian arts in general. But my last spotlight today is, I thought this one might fit a little bit in relation to some of the themes that I understand you may have would have been inspired by your guest today. So this book is actually can be found in our non-fiction genre page, which is I guess is marked with a very eloquent and curious crocodile with reading glasses.
Yeah.
But the book is called Becoming Anti-Fragile, and that's by Australian author Dr. Paige Williams.
Ah, yes. It's a great book. I've read that one.
Yeah. And Becoming Anti-Fragile reads, as the uncertainty and complexity just seem to keep going, are you running out of ideas to sustain your energy and motivation to feel well, do well, and lead well? Becoming Anti-Fragile, learning to thrive through disruption, challenge and change, is a practical guide for anyone who wants evidence-based tools to support themselves and their teams through these extraordinary times. In it, Dr. Paige Williams asks and answers, how can we be better through our struggle experiences and learn to thrive through disruption, challenge and change? And that is Becoming Anti-Fragile by Dr. Paige Williams. And so what did you find upon your reading, Veronica? Was there some really excellent tools that you were
incredibly
able to
practical. And I know Paige. I haven't talked to her for quite a while, but I do know we did some writing together. And her work is eminently practical. So, in the leadership space and those kind of things, which we both work in, what I found about her book was that she was able to take some of those fairly complex theories and lots of the research there and offer ways. It's done in kind of there's a case study that she uses this woman throughout the story, and it makes it, okay, I could do that. Yes, I can see that that's a theory and all those kind of things, but hey, this is what I could do in my work, tomorrow or today, if I was to try those kind of things. And it's interesting because that leads into one of the quotes that I have today, but I'll save that for later. So yes, eminently practical, grounded in evidence, and really a nice light read rather than really heavy into the research and theory. So yeah, it was good.
And that's, for me anyway, on a personal level, that's the most important thing about trying to look for different approaches to life or different life skills, life hacks, and that is tools that can be quite quickly. I mean, sometimes there's long-term approaches to develop skills, but nothing beats skills that you can try and see if they work, almost instantly, because then if you there's no disputing it. They either work or they don't, and if they do work, then it becomes just your choice whether you want to use them or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like for myself, I always think of the analogy of boiling water. So whatever information or anything I hear, if you tell somebody, and I know scientifically speaking, it depends on the altitude, but nonetheless the result's the same. But if you tell somebody, put a pot of water on fire, eventually it will boil.
Yes.
There's no interpretation. There's no subjective analysis. All you do is put water, and if it boils, it was correct. And that's something you can carry with you for the rest of your life. Beautiful. Yes, but nonetheless, as I mentioned, Becoming Anti-Fragile, learning to live through disruption, challenge and change. I thought it might be, I suspect it has a little bit to do with some of the themes that perhaps you discussed with our wonderful guest today that you had the absolute pleasure of chatting with.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tabitha Bird, and let me just read you a little bit about Tabitha. I've got her website open and I just got caught in it because it is so beautifully designed. Tabitha is a very stylish author, let me say, and the two books that she's written that I've read, which is A Lifetime of Impossible Days and The Emporium of Imagination, are just fantastic. So she describes herself as a writer, a wearer of wings and a believer in the impossible. So I'll talk a little bit more about her later, just before we jump into the interview. But the couple of things that really strike me is around magical realism for a start, but also I guess the power of analogy and metaphor and simile and all those kind of things to help people understand other concepts. So while her books are absolutely luminous and they are beautifully and compassionately written, they're, I guess they're a light story if you think about it, and that they don't get really deeply into trauma, but they are stories about, The Emporium is, a story about grief. Lifetime of Impossible Days is about old age in some ways and those kind of things. But what I love, about the magical realism is that it's just, she describes it as an otherworldly twist. So it's contemporary stories based in real life, and for her, both based in the rural town of Boona, where she lives up in Queensland, but an otherworldly twist or a touch of the impossible. And I just love that about magical realism. It is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny when the term magical realism, it kind of it invokes a real sense of wonder, for me, and also I guess a little bit irony as well, in the sense of, I think when I look around the world, I see magic everywhere, but also see magic being cloaked in, I guess, shrouds to make it more palatable as non-magic. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that right, but for example, the process of a seed bursting into a tree, for me, is magic, and the fact that there is, within that little seed, that tiny seed, is basically a complex software, a complex store of information. For example, that you put it in a bit of dirt and then a little bit of water, and that activates this program where it knows how to it becomes a factory, and it becomes a chemical factory. It becomes a physical factory, and draws all this stuff, and it's like a lab in that, magical lab, or maybe a wizard doing some sort of weird potions, and then reaches out and stretches out to the universe. That's magic, but we sometimes, I think, we put terms on it to sort of take away that magic in a weird way, and
too true.
And then I think something a little bit similar with grief as well. We don't. It's not so much of a discussion, really, is it? So, and by not being able to discuss it as much, or not having it as such an open discussion, the magic that can be found within it can't ever be found, because the discussion is usually in hushed whispers. Keep going. Sorry, my brain's firing on all cylinders. And that's, I think, grief. Any sort of literature or stories or writings that deals with grief, I really find so important and so beautiful, if for only one reason, and that is that there's the opportunity as a reader to, depending on the story, of course, but to take the time, take a breath, and discover some really important lessons that can be learned in grief, and also the hope and magic that can be found in grief. And I can only speak for myself again, of course, but sometimes when you go through grief and life does seem to take the wind out of your sails and sometimes open up the floor beneath you, it can be pretty difficult in those times to find that magic, or that sense of hope. It's easy to lose sense of hope, but then to read, stories of grief, it can allow you to, I guess, like we were talking about having tools. I think it can give you the tools to examine your own grief and then discover that magic in there. And realise that sometimes it's just shrouds that we've put on, that just like we do in our daily life. We flick a light switch on, we don't think about electricity and how magical that weird thing is, or where it comes from. We just think about a light switch on a light bulb. But there is a magic behind it. And, that the one thing about magic is also there's a sense of eternal to it, isn't there?
Yeah,
and that's,
absolutely.
I think, where the hope comes from.
Yeah. But it's also, grief, you find grief in your own way, and I think that's something that is important in Tabitha's work, The Emporium of Imagination, is that, you grieve not just necessarily for someone that's passed, but you can grieve for a life unlived, for an opportunity missed, for all sorts of things. So it's really lovely, very nice. Now I want to go back just to magical. I shouldn't say very nice. It's more than nice. Nice is such an interesting word, isn't it? Anyway, in my brain is stuck to say to you that magical realism. Did you know that in fact it was popularised in the 1950s by Latin American writers?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's used to describe that kind of, literary subgenre. And what I like about it is that the authors, unlike fantasy novels, the authors deliberately withhold information about the magic in their created world so that the magical events are kind of ordinary occurrences, and they present as normal, everyday life, which is fantastic. So that's, as Tabitha said, an otherworldly twist.
Okay, that's interesting too, because prior to chatting with you today and recording, I was thinking a little bit about grief and literature and sort of themes that brings up, and obviously magic and magic realism, and I thought about the vibrant colours, the celebrations, and the symbolism, and at the same time the normality that comes with. And you just mentioned sort of Latin America, but I'm thinking of the Day of the Dead, which is where they'll be cooking food for their lost ones. It's just here in Australia, and I can only speak for myself, but I still for the whole time I've lived here, it's never happened. We don't have a celebration of the dead. We don't have a celebration of the afterlife, whereas for example, a country like Mexico they have a celebration for the afterlife and the loved ones that are no longer with them, and and through all the bright colours and the festivities, it's a way of, like you said, normalising that magic, and in this case, perhaps normalising the mystery. Well, not normalising it, but embracing it rather than keeping it hidden in the shadows. So it's interesting to say that.
There you go. Look, there's surges, and these days I think it is becoming more popular as people, as you mentioned, kind of seek that the magic in everyday life, I guess, is the thing. So it's a genre or a subgenre that I particularly love, and of course, grief. Having written my own memoir about grief and learning how to find a way to put it in my life, I think that's the Emporium of Imagination, particularly of Tabitha Bird's, really touched that sensitivity button that I have. I guess some days I think I'm great, and then every now and again you think, I'm pretty sad today. So it's lovely to read a story that gives you a way to, I guess, to process it. And, when Tabitha talks in the interview about some feedback from some of her readers. So, I'll let her tell us all about that. And so why don't I go on and introduce you to Tabitha Bird. So let me just find her website again. All these tabs I've got open. There she is. Okay.
Well, while you do that, I just harking back to your curiosity at the strangeness of the word nice. And I thought nice is a positive word, but if I cook something, or at least try a different menu, like try to cook something different and, ask something, does it taste all right? Yeah, it's nice. That's not what I want to hear.
I want to hear it's fantastic. It's so hot. It's great.
Nice is, and I only say that because I think that circles around that idea of shrouding magic to make it normal. So nice is shrouding something else.
Yes, and the same as the word
as agreeable.
Yes, or interesting. That was interesting. In other words, I didn't like it. Words have power and meaning, don't they? Depending on where you are. So there you go.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah,
very good.
All right. If I ever cook for anybody out there, please don't tell me it's nice.
Okay, so Tabitha Bird grew up in a bayside suburb of Queensland in Australia, where she hid and told stories to ferns and weeds alike. Story gave her something to hope in and a way to escape the traumas of her childhood. Eventually, she did unexpected things like get older and teach primary school. There she read stories to children like their lives depended on it. To this day, she's quite sure that lives do depend on stories and stories on lives. The first whisperings of her own story was from that forgotten child she once was. She found writing in a very dark place. When all of life was a downpour, the gift of writing story was the creation of a place to heal and to overcome. Stories were her reconnection, the hint or a trail back to who I was. And I certainly found that with writing my memoir, is that catharsis of reflection and writing about the young woman who'd suffered the traumas was amazing. Anyway, back to Tabitha. So her chihuahua was bought for her during this time. Her name is Lion. Yes, Lion. A big-hearted, brave thing who has no idea she's only pocket size. She's been Tabitha's loyal writing buddy for the past 9 years, and today she's happily writing her next book in that small rural town in Australia. So she moved from the suburbs, and her hope is that through her words she might be blessed enough to champion others into wild acts of bravery and self-love. Her Chihuahua husband, 3 sons, and the fact that a book can be born out of the ashes of her past are all the reasons she needs to believe in magic. So there you go.
What a beautiful, beautiful introduction.
Isn't that a fantastic introduction? Yeah. So let's hear more about the magic of Tabitha Bird and her writing life.
And her lion chihuahua.
Yeah.
No, sounds great. Please let us do.
And welcome to another Australian Book Lovers author interview. And I am delighted to have with me this evening Tabitha Bird. So welcome to ABL, Tabitha.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited.
That's good. And there are many exciting things happening in your literary world at the moment. Now, Tabitha, what land are you coming? What country do you write on? Where are you coming from tonight?
Good question. And Boona is a part of a bigger area, and I forget how to pronounce the name of it now, so I think I'm going to say it a lot wrong, but I think it's the
Bunjalung?
Bunjalung. Yeah, and I'm pretty I'm pretty sure I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Bunjalung land. I think that's it, but I'm pretty sure I've said that wrong. Apologies.
So hopefully that's all right. We will have many more exposures to many Indigenous words. So I'm coming to you from Wurrung country on Wurundjeri land down here, just outside Melbourne, just on the border of some of the traditional lands down here. So you are in rural Queensland and have been there for a little while. I was having a look at your website, which, is very interesting. Welcome to the Story Nest, and also reading your bio on Australian Book Lovers. And tell us a little bit about yourself, and when did you first believe that you were a writer?
Oh, great question. A little bit about myself. Well, we moved to Boona about 7 years ago when our third baby arrived in our family. He was quite unexpected. And we thought to ourselves, well, we need somewhere to be where we can not have an incredibly huge mortgage and see my husband occasionally would be great. So he said to me, well, his business was big enough and all online. We didn't need to be close to a city. So he said, what about that lovely little country town that we like to take day trips to? And I said, I would love to move to Boona. So we did. We moved out here to Boona, and I've been writing out here ever since. But I began my writing journey probably about 11 years ago when I actually went into counselling to deal with some trauma of my own. And it was kind of the way that I just began to explore and I suppose understand where I was at and what I was thinking. A way to work through my own issues, I suppose. And it was actually my counsellor who said to me, so you can write? And I said, oh no, I'm just sending you some, pieces of writing. It's not, no, I can't write. I was very shy about it. And she actually said to me, no, you are actually really good at this and you can write. So she was probably the first person that pointed it out to me in my later life. But as a child, I always loved storytelling. I never really thought of being an author. I didn't really know when I was very young what an author really was. And then as I grew up, I didn't really see myself as a writer because I actually was very bad at spelling and grammar due to having dyslexia. So I didn't really see myself in that light. But storytelling was something I loved, and I often would tell stories to myself and my dog and my little sister. So
very good. So you were the storyteller in the family.
I was the storyteller in the family, and I sort of used it as a way to escape and probably just provide a nice, safe place for my sister and I to inhabit since our house was a little bit chaotic. So storytelling was really important in my early years. And as soon as I learnt to read, then books became incredibly important as well.
And your favourite books as a child?
Ooh, I absolutely loved Enid Blyton, particularly The Faraway Tree with the wishing chair.
Yes, loved all of those.
I was so inspired, I guess, by the happiness of those children and the freedom they had to go and explore, and then just the magic of these worlds that would arrive at the top of the tree and the people that inhabited the tree. I think it was my first true falling in love with magic.
Who was your favourite character? Can you remember any of them there?
I loved Moonface and the
Ah,
Saucepan Man.
I was going to say the Saucepan Man. He was one of my faves too. Oh, no, that's lovely.
I loved his clanging and banging.
Yes, yeah, very good. Now, as I look back as an adult, I think, what were their parents thinking, letting them go off and climb these trees? But anyway, that was the innocence of childhood. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so let's have a look at the Emporium of Imagination. Tell me a little bit about where the inspiration came from this book.
The Emporium of Imagination actually began a very long time ago while I was querying agents, literary agents, for A Lifetime of Impossible Days. So way back before my first book was even published, I was busy doing nothing but waiting, which writers out there will know there's a lot of waiting. So I did the thing that they tell all writers to do, which was to get busy and write the next book. So the Emporium just sort of began as a way to entertain myself, and it was a very different book from what is there today. And it was more just around the stories of the characters that had lost significant people in their life, but there wasn't yet the magic of the shop that had arrived.
Yep.
And one thing I've learnt about my own writing is that the magic is a layer that often comes quite late to me. So it usually turns up in some of the very last drafts, and all of a sudden this idea will occur to me. And I was actually inspired by the true story of the Japanese wind phone. A wonderful Japanese gardener called Mr. Itiru actually built a garden in his property with a very special phone booth that he built, and he placed a disconnected rotary phone inside this booth. And for him, it was a way that he could talk to his cousin that had passed the year before. And so I actually came across this article one day and read it and was absolutely just transfixed, I suppose, by the way in which his imagination was so important in his healing. And then, of course, we know the 2011 tsunami hit after the earthquake off the coast of Japan. And many, many people in that area lost their lives, including the town in which Mr. Itiru lived. So his property was largely unaffected. He was up quite high. So he opened up his property and the phone booth for people to come who had lost their own loved ones and talk to their loved ones on his wind phone. And to this day, thousands and thousands of people pilgrimage to his wind phone just to talk to their loved ones. So I was just taken with this idea of how powerful that connection was.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, for so many people, yeah.
Just that opportunity to have a mechanism to say those words, to, go through that process. That's fantastic.
That's exactly it. And so then, I thought about a shop arriving in town and it offering phones that people could speak on. But also I thought about, what if this shop had things inside it that offered people a connection with somebody that they'd loved, or something that they'd lost, a lost dream or opportunity, or any of the things in which we lose and grieve for in life. And so the Emporium and the shop was born.
Chatting to so many authors and having so many lovely books on the website, my book budget has been blown out of the water. But anyway, that's okay. I feel like I'm supporting local industry. So good.
That's it. Never too many books.
Never too many. No, absolutely. I've had children just leave home, so I've got space in their rooms now. I can put more libraries in there. So it's all
wonderful.
So tell us about Boona, because how did the people of Boona feel being in your book? So obviously very Australian. So tell us all about it.
So A Lifetime of Impossible Days, the first book, was also set in Boona. And I only really mentioned maybe one or two places in Boona in that book. And a lot of the local stores and local people were telling me that people from outside of Boona were travelling into Boona to actually see Boona and see one of the shops that was mentioned. And I thought to myself how amazing that was, number one. And secondly, with the book that I was currently writing and editing, how cool it would be to actually let my characters run amok down the main street of Boona in many of the shops that were there, and actually mention the name of those shops. So I asked permission from the shop owners. Did they mind if their shops were actually mentioned by name in the book? and they did not mind. They were very excited.
Very good.
So if you read the book, you'll actually find the names of gorgeous little shops like the Story Tree Cafe and Hummingbirds Cafe, and they actually exist. So my characters are well and truly placed within inside Boonah, and it's just this gorgeous little country town. We're not that big, but big enough to have a little IGA and a main street and, of course, a pub.
Yes. Got to have one of those.
And we're predominantly farming out here, so cattle, but also apparently we produce most of the carrots in Queensland.
Okay, very good. Good to know.
Yeah.
And so Boonah celebrates being in the book rather than being shy. They're really promoting.
They do. At first they were a little shocked, and I don't think they believed me that a big publisher was actually publishing a book where Boonah was the setting. I think they were all like, okay, cool. But once it came out and it started to do well, and of course the second book is also set in Boonah, they were super excited, and they have supported it in great numbers, which I'm very appreciative of. So.
That's very good. So tell us, obviously then there's a really strong Australian flavour. Can you imagine writing stories not set where you live? Or have you written stories?
No. Yes and no. I think for me, the power of home and the connection with community has just really fitted with the stories that I've currently been writing with the Emporium and A Lifetime. So it just made sense to set them here where I was living, where I feel that I belong and where there is that strong sense of connection. However, I have lived in other places around the world, so I wouldn't be surprised if one day one of my books turns up having a setting that is somewhere else. But I do think there's something really powerful about Australians writing places that are Australian, especially small little towns that otherwise wouldn't, really make it on many maps.
Yes.
So there's just something powerful, I suppose, about supporting local and supporting the place where you live. And also it's really powerful for me as a writer to be fully immersed in the seasons and the people and the places that I'm actually writing about. It makes for really powerful writing. So
yeah, it is so comfortable and smooth, and the language, the colloquialisms that you don't even notice just feels so lovely. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, given that you're in Boonah and you're telling us a few bits and pieces, one of the questions that we sometimes ask is, are there any secrets in your writing?
Secrets in my writing. Well, if I told you though, then they wouldn't be secrets, would they?
So that's okay. So you'll have to read the book, or listeners. So we will leave that one. That's absolutely
You'll have
fine.
to read it.
So why should listeners read your books?
I think listeners who enjoy magic or so magic or realism is what I write, and it's not fantasy. So it's not a full-blown other fantastical world that you travel into. It's set here in the world in which we know, but there's just this otherworldly twist. So I think it would be great for writers who love, say, contemporary fiction, but also love that touch of the impossible, or just that kiss of magic in their stories, and are willing to sort of let go just a little bit and have some fun and play.
Yeah, very good. So tell me, what's the best response you've ever had to your writing?
I think the best responses I have to my writing are those fans who let me see into their personal world by writing just gorgeous messages or emails to me about how my books have actually impacted their lives in ways in which I could never have predicted. I think with the first book especially, and obviously I've yet to have tons of feedback from the general public about my second, because it's not out yet. But with the first, I was just really stunned by the number of people who told me, that they took that book and that they told, people for the first time about their own traumas, or that they went and got help for the first time because of that book, or other things that I just could never have predicted when I wrote it, because obviously it's not a self-help book and it's not a memoir. So there is my emotional truth inside the book, but I never expected it to have that sort of impact. And I think that's such a privilege for a writer, when your work just connects so deeply and so personally with readers. I think there is no greater magic.
No, you are absolutely right. Magical realism aside, and I think the honesty and authenticity of the words that you've included, certainly in your first book, and it sounds like very much so in the second, just resonates so well with people who are feeling that thread of. It's interesting. I was chatting to Darren, a co-host, the other day, and we were talking about what we like in books, and for me it's always the people. It's always that social sense, whether it's written in Boona or Brisbane or Bendigo, whatever that might be, whether it's another world, another ship. It's about the relationship with people. It's about their growth. And being a coach myself, I can't help but look at how people develop and to see them answer their own questions. Just as you said, it's such a gift, isn't it?
It is. I think one of the things I always hold myself to when I'm writing is to write with a certain level of vulnerability, and to write it the way in which to write it real, I suppose, to not gloss over difficult topics, and to, I suppose, give readers a piece of what I have found the human experience to mean. And, I guess through the words, reach out and say, I too have been there, I too understand, and then leave it up to them, how that connects with them. But I think it's so important when we're writing books that do have issues in them, to be true and to write those things with in a certain level of fearlessness, I suppose, with courage. Yeah,
absolutely. And where have you found that courage yourself? I guess you obviously had some encouragement from the counsellor, and then decided to put things on paper. So when did it feel like you were ready to put those words out in the world?
Yeah, it took a long time. The original words that I was writing, of course, have never made it to print. They were very personal and really were for me and for what I was working through. But I think in doing that, the power of words on paper and the power of story really presented itself to me, and sort of spotlighted itself that, this was something that I enjoyed and something that I was good at, and a way that, could be so powerful if I found the right story. And of course, when I found A Lifetime of Impossible Days and the characters, the Willers in that book,
the Willers.
they just came alive for me, and suddenly I was able to tell a truth using magical realism in a way that was safe, but also explored, issues. So that was really powerful for me. And I was encouraged, definitely by my counsellor. I am also married to a wonderful man who I've been married to now for 23 years. We're high school sweethearts. And
very good.
His encouragement has been invaluable. And just that person who always sort of whispers in my ear, I think you can do it. I believe in you. I don't think this is silly. Everyone doubts themselves sometimes. Keep going. You need a positive voice. It's a long road to traditional publication.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, sounds like you've got a great support team. So how long between your first query, or perhaps how long between the end of the draft that you thought, yep, I'm ready to send it, and when you got that call or email that said, yes, we're going to publish a book?
I started writing probably 12 years ago, but the book that is A Lifetime of Impossible Days was probably ready about 2 to 3 years before it was published. And I think there's a moment where you think, this is as good as I can get it on my own. That you've done all your work. You've sent it out to, your critique partners. I entered it into every competition I could possibly find for unpublished manuscripts to get feedback. But a key moment for me was an academy that's online called the Manuscript Academy. It's actually an American academy. However, writers from all over the world can access it. And the beauty of this academy is, for those of us writers that don't live near big capital cities where we can go to events where we might be able to meet agents or have or pitch our books to agents in person, the Manuscript Academy offers a chance to book in with a literary agent or an editor and pitch them, your first 10 pages and get feedback on that, which is really difficult, because when you're writing query letters, which is, just for those who don't know, just a letter where you pitch your book to a literary agent to see if they want to offer representation. If you get rejected on that, and you do many, many, many times, there's usually no feedback. It's just what's called a standard rejection, or a form rejection, which just simply says this isn't right for our agency at this time, which doesn't actually give you any feedback on your writing and doesn't actually help you to sort of push forward. You get to a certain point where you know you can write, but you need help to push through to that next level. And the Manuscript Academy was really vital in doing that. There was one particular agent who gave me amazing feedback on my first 10 pages. I then paid to have her critique the first 250 pages. And her actual comments and feedback on that meant that I did another full edit of the book. And around that time, the Manuscript Academy contacted me and said, look, we'd just like to, as a thank you for doing some paid sponsorship for other writers, we just wondered if you would like to have a meeting with an editor from a publishing house. And I said, yeah, that'd be lovely. Yes, please.
Of course.
That. And it happened to be Kimberly Atkins, who was currently working as a publisher at Penguin Random House in Australia. She's not anymore, but she was at the time. And I looked up what type of books Kimberly was looking to buy, and she was looking for rural romance at the time, which I don't write.
Yes.
But I thought, you know what, still, whatever happens, you know, even if this isn't her jam, at least I can get some feedback from a really high level professional. So I sent off the first 10 pages, and that was all I was supposed to send. It was just 10 pages. But about a week later, she contacted me and she said, actually, Tab, could you send the first 50? So I sent them, and then she said, no, actually, just send the whole lot. I just thought she was being nice. I think that's just a nice thing that she was doing. So I sent it all. Well, by the time we had the phone call, she'd read most of it, and she was just in love with it. And I was bemused and also just incredibly grateful. I think while she was talking, I was pretty teary, actually, because
so beautiful.
Realised that oh my goodness, I might have made it. And not long after that, I got an offer of representation from an agent, and probably 2 weeks after that, we had a letter of offer from Penguin Random House to publish the book. And there's never been so many tears of happiness. I rang my husband and I said, you got to come home from work. I was sobbing. He was like, what's wrong?
Something tragic. No, I'm really happy.
So he came home. We jumped around the house like school kids and cried and hugged each other. So yeah, it's a long journey, but it certainly was, anyway, for me, worth it.
Yes, absolutely. So Emporium then, on the back of that, quicker, easier. What happened with Emporium?
So much easier. I mean, once you find a home with a publishing house, and, you know, I was very grateful. My first book did very well. So my publisher, Bev Cousins, who is an amazing human, was very excited and was very keen to see any future work, and asked if I was working on something else. And I said, in fact, that I was. And she said, can I just see the first 3 chapters? Well, I quite naively thought, she's just, you know, interested. So I just sent the 3 chapters off, and I didn't realize she was going to take them to the acquisitions meeting at Penguin.
No. You might have done another run through.
Yeah, that's it. I might have just been too scared to send them at all. But I'm glad I did. And on the basis of those 3 chapters, Penguin offered on the Emporium of Imagination. So I think once you've got your foot in the door with a publishing house, and if you gel and those relationships are strong, and you work well together, which I do, Penguin are wonderful. The second and subsequent books it can be a lot easier. I'm not going to say they're a guarantee, because they're not. Nothing's a guarantee, but they're definitely easier to place because you've already got your foot in the door with that publisher.
Yeah. How long did it take you to write the Emporium? How long for that first draft, for the whole story? Because obviously you had bits and pieces in your mind and you were writing it as you went along. How long to put it together?
The first draft actually came together super quick. Myself and another writer did a thing called writing sprints, where for 1 hour every night, 1 hour every night, we wrote, and at the end of that hour we would send each other what we'd written, which was fantastic. So in 12 weeks I actually put together an entire book.
That's brilliant.
which I was calling the Emporium of Imagination. But the actual draft, obviously, once Penguin bought the 3 chapters, I then had to go back and I realised what a mess, in fact, that the rest of the book was in. So that was really a lot of, you really have to get dedicated then, because once you're on a contract, you're on a deadline. So subsequent drafts came together quite fast. So the Emporium actually came together a lot quicker than my first, but I had grown as a writer as well, and I knew what I was doing a lot more. You know, definitely you're not perfect, you're always growing, but there's a certain confidence that comes from having already published your first book, and you sort of understand your process a lot better.
Yes.
And you know what it is that you need to do and how to fix things up. And you also realize that you can pull an entire manuscript apart and you still have the ability to put that thing back together.
Yes.
Which you don't know in the first one. You just pull it apart and think, oh my goodness, I've broken it.
So obviously night writing or writing around the kids, you've got, 3 boys, 2 boys?
3 boys.
3 boys.
No, 3 boys.
So young ones, they're going to fill your day a little bit. Tell us about your writing routine. Do you have one?
I do and I don't. I do a lot of writing at night. I don't actually make myself religiously stick to a writing routine, because I find that just sucks the joy out of writing. And I need writing to stay a play space for me, because the minute that it becomes work, it becomes a year 12 English assignment, and that's not ever what I want.
No.
So it needs to stay fun for me. I need to really be enjoying what I'm doing, because that enthusiasm is going to come through in the writing. So when the boys were younger, they're not so young anymore, but when they were younger, definitely during the first book, I did most of my writing between the hours of midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then, of course, once the youngest was off to school, I had more time during the day. And I'm very blessed to say that I am able to write full time. So now they're all at school, and I've got 2 teenagers, and my youngest is 10. So they're not so little anymore.
Yes.
And I have the freedom to sort of write, any day that I want. And so I don't tend to write so late into the night anymore, because I don't have to, and I'm usually pretty tired by the time I get to the end of a full writing day. So
yeah, very good. So what do your children think of you being a published author?
I think they were pretty shocked when I first took them into a bookstore and I pulled the book off the shelf of an actual bookstore and they saw Mum's name on it, and I think they looked at me. I think that was the moment where they went, like a proper author.
Now we know what you mean.
I understand. But they're not babies, and so they understand, that Mum is dream chasing. And I think, my children have never been the center of my world, because I don't think that's a great place for children to be in. I love them. I care for them. Their needs and obviously are met. But I really think it's important to, place your dreams and your desires up there and make sure that they're important and that you fulfill them. And in doing so, our children get to see what it's like to dream chase, and they also get to understand that they're not the center of the universe, and that other people do want things, and sometimes they have to make some sacrifices, just the way in which their father and I sometimes make sacrifices for them. So I think it's been a really super positive thing. Good. My eldest is pursuing professional soccer and is actually playing for the Brisbane Strikers this year. So I think he's been able to see that there's knockbacks, there's rejection. But if you keep going, then, things can happen, and, sometimes they do. So I think it's been a really great lesson in just what actual dream chasing looks like, and what it looks like to want something and go after it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So magical realism,
yes,
is such a subtle form of writing. So do you read a lot of magical realism, or what else do you read?
I do read a lot of magical realism. I think in Australia it's not as huge as it is overseas, although we do have some very talented writers writing in it. Obviously Trent Dalton and his last book falls under that category. But, you know, probably the big established magical realism writers, I'm thinking of, you know, Matt Haig and the Midnight Library, that's done so well. You know, we've got Sarah Addison Allen, who's writing in magical realism, has done for a very long time. Even the Night Circus, I believe, falls into that category. So Erin Morgenstern. So for me, yeah, I think it's important as a writer to be reading, to be filling that creative tank with other people's worlds and other people's imaginations. So I'm constantly reading. I read as much magical realism as I can physically get my hands on. I also just really enjoy contemporary fiction or any fiction with quirky characters or a bit of an offbeat, you know, a bit of offbeat characters or an offbeat plot.
Right.
Because I have a lot of quirky characters in my own story. So it's nice to see how other people handle that. And I write a lot of older characters and a lot of very young characters. So I'm always interested in reading books that have characters that are older or younger.
Excellent.
Yeah.
More older characters. Bring them on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are you reading at the moment?
At the moment, I am reading the gorgeous book called The Lost Apothecary. It's just come out and it's actually not Australian, although I do read a lot of Australian, but this one is. Okay. But it is a gorgeous book and I highly recommend it. But after that, I've got a lot of my own author friends who have their books coming out. So Maya Linnell's got another one coming out. Sandy Docker's got other ones coming out. So I'm going to be reading them with hungry eyes.
So many great books to read. So many.
There's too many.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So magical realism, not much research, or, you know, you've got the story about the gentleman in Japan. Did you have to do much research realism?
Yeah, you do and you don't. I mean, obviously it's not historical fiction, so you're not, you know, you're not spending a lot of time in the research process. I tend to stop and research where it makes sense. So when I came across the story about the Japanese wind phone, then I read everything I could get my hands on about that. I watched a ton of documentaries on it because it's quite popular and it's quite renowned. So there's a lot of information to get your hands on. When I wrote my first book, I did a lot of research about Boona back in the 1950s and 60s because part of the book is set back in that time period. And I obviously, I wasn't around then, and I also was not in Boona then. So
yes.
I found that our library has a great thing called the archives where they've got all the newspapers and, you know, articles from when Boona was just this teeny little town. And one thing I found, which I thought was so funny, was back in the 1950s, you could pick up a phone and dial number 1, and that was the hardware. Yes. You could dial number 4, and that was the post office. You know, it just that blew my mind.
Yes, yeah.
So I do little bits of research as it makes sense to the book, but mostly it's my imagination, so there's not a great deal of research needed.
Beautiful. That is lovely. So tell the listeners, where can they find the Emporium of Imagination?
So the Emporium of Imagination is everywhere that good books are sold. So all of your Angus and Robinsons and QBDs and Dimmicks and all of those places will have it. But also so do all of your little independent bookstores. So if you've got an independent bookstore near you, go and ask them if they can get it in. If they haven't got it in, but they probably will. A lot of them have contacted me and said they have orders in for the book. So you should be able to get it absolutely anywhere. And of course, online at all the usual places, Booktopia, Amazon, all have it well stocked. I do know that Booktopia has sold a great deal of them. We were number 1 on their hottest pre-orders. So get in if you want them, because I'm assuming they're running out.
They'll be running quick.
Very cool. My publisher's pressed a second reprint already. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so that means that pre-orders have been high. So yes, if you're wanting one, get on in there and pre-order it.
Very good. Yeah, I'm afraid I cheated. I wanted it immediately, and so I'm getting it on Kindle. But I might wander up to New Leaves in Woodend, which is a tiny little place up near us. That's our last local bookshop. Unfortunately, all our other ones have closed, and we have to head down to the Big Smoke to get a real bookstore. But that's okay. Tell the listeners where they can find you online.
Yeah, so I am everywhere. My website is www.tabithaandbird.com. But I'm also, if you Google my name, you'll find me, but I'm also on Facebook and I'm on Instagram @Bird Tabitha. You can find me there. I'm very active on social media. And if you follow me on social media, you'll probably get to be involved in the writing of my books. I often ask my readers questions and they get involved on all sorts of issues for which they usually feel quite passionate about.
Excellent. So, crowdsourcing or crowd resourcing.
Yeah, they like to be involved. They like to play with me. So that's great.
Oh, that's very good. Very good. All right. Tabitha, thank you so much for giving us your time tonight. It must be many things on the schedule when you've just got a few weeks before the launch of the Emporium. So good luck with everything. And we hope to see, actually, I know I didn't ask you, what else are you writing?
Oh, what else am I writing? Yes. And I am actually writing a third book at the moment.
Are you allowed to share anything?
I can share a tiny little bit with you, not too much because it's not under contract yet.
Okay.
But the tentative title is The Healing Giggle of Wonder. And it's about a little girl who's 4 years old, and she is actually wonder. So she's wonder personified. And two other characters. There's another older character, Harold, who's 64, and a middle-aged woman, Selena, who's 44. And the way in which they interact and come together, and I can't tell you any more than that.
That sounds fantastic. I love that combination because that's real life, isn't it? It's not just teenagers saving the world or superheroes. No. Fantastic.
I actually love it when older and younger people save the world.
Yes, because we're not dead yet.
Exactly.
Oh, no, that's fantastic. All right, Tabitha, thank you so very much, and stay safe up there.
Yes, thank you very much. It was a pleasure speaking with you all tonight. Thank you.
So there you are, coming back to hearing about the wind phone and the connection to Boona, and, writers having to get busy while there's lots of waiting. Then second books can arrive. So I love to think about reading as therapy, about writing as therapy. Yeah, there's fantastic. And looking forward to Tabitha's next book, The Healing Giggle of Wonder.
Oh, there you go. There's a title to remember forever. And Tabitha, thank you so much for such a beautiful interview, and obviously for listing some of your amazing titles on the Australian Book Lovers website. And anyone who has seen a photo of Tabitha will see that it is just nothing but passion and energy and style and art coming from that lady.
Absolutely delightful. Yeah,
wonderful guest.
And certainly the Emporium of Imagination now, which has been out for a little while, is just fantastic. And it's just, and luminous is the word, that I wrote a review about it. Luminous and lyrical, an absolute treat to read. So, yeah, fantastic.
Well, you mentioned that you were inspired earlier for one of your quotes. So now I'm curious, what quotes do you have for us this episode, Veronica?
Yes. Okay, so I've got two quotes from two very different people today. The first one is from a woman who was called Eve Ensler, and in fact is now known mononymously as V. So she's an American playwright, performer, feminist and activist, and she's best known for her play The Vagina Monologues.
I've heard of that.
I've heard of that, yep. So Eve's quote is, "When you bring consciousness to anything, things begin to shift."
Yeah, so that's it's open for interpretation, that one, because I'm thinking, you can bring consciousness, or you can project consciousness like on your favourite plant, like I do. With chili plants, they have characters. And the relationship then shifts dramatically, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess you could say a little bit of magic is created.
Yeah, and even thinking about, a book such as Tabitha's, where using a very gentle analogy of the fabulous Emporium, it still brings a consciousness to people and it allows things to shift. So, yeah, if you focus on it, then already you're doing something different. And whether that be grief, or whether that be your career, or whether that be, being anti-fragile, as, Paige Williams talks about in her book, when you bring consciousness to anything, things begin to shift. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, straight away, I've just changed my perception on that one now.
Because you brought consciousness to it. There you go.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Touche. Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess focusing on the moment, really,
Yeah.
is that possibly one way to interpret?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All the way from that to thinking about, analogy and similes and metaphors. If you read something or see something, you talked about your chili plants, in a sense of giving them names and those kind of things and having them as a part of, because I know you use chilies a lot in cooking and, spicing up the life and spicing up your meals, all sorts of things, yeah.
Yeah, causing fights in the kitchen when I forgot to mention.
That's right. Yeah, let's not bring your domestic arguments there. So
Yes.
tell me, give me one of your quotes.
Certainly. So I, inspired by today's podcast, I was actually really drawn to one quote by none other than Helen Keller. Mm-hmm. And the quote reads, "What we once enjoyed and deeply loved, we can never lose, for all that we love deeply becomes part of us." And that's something that I believe wholeheartedly. I think when you lose something or lose someone, should I say, and that they do take on a different form of energy within you because it's something, especially if it's somebody who you've loved. And I just think there's plenty of mysteries in the universe, plenty of mysteries to be found here, just on this magical planet called Earth.
Yeah.
So I suspect, the greatest mysteries of all, they're going to be pretty cool. And maybe, by carrying somebody or lost loved ones in our heart, moving forward, that's a temporary hold, because it's just you carry with them until you meet them again. And I think that, the universe is pretty damn insanely crazy and beautiful, and I've got no reason to suspect it won't happen. So, you never lose them.
No, that's really beautiful. Yeah. Okay, and
Your number two.
My number two. So this is from a woman called Kristen Neff, Neff, and I love a lot of her work. She's an associate professor at the University of Texas, and she's also studied at other universities. But what I love about it is that her research interest is self-compassion. So there's so many beautiful books that she's written and lots of articles. And I think I originally saw her on a TED Talk, which is how I kind of got into some of the stuff that she's looking at. And as somebody who was recovering from grief, thinking about self-compassion was incredibly enlightening. Brought consciousness to it, a different kind of consciousness. So the quote is, "The beauty of self-compassion is that instead of replacing negative feelings with positive ones, new positive emotions are generated by embracing the negative ones."
I like that one.
Yeah.
Definitely. Because there's some things that you have to incorporate into who you are. And
Yeah.
And you can't fight them. And
No,
I think
and
that's
there's no
sometimes the
point in
battle
replacing that
occurs.
negative stuff. But if you embrace it, then the self-compassion already builds, new positive feelings and energy. So, yeah, she's got some great stuff, Kristen Neff.
Yeah, and self-compassion is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even in any day, I think most of us all are probably guilty of beating ourselves up before we show any compassion or perhaps celebrate. And it makes a huge difference to your mood, I think,
Yes.
in general.
Yeah.
So, no, that's a really good one.
What have you got for me?
I, for my second quote, have one. I've got a quote from A.A. Milne from Winnie the Pooh.
That's lovely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like this one for a little bit of something. And I'm not going to say it's a nice quote. I'm going to say it is a cutely beautiful quote.
Okay.
And the quote is, "If there ever comes a day when we can't be together, keep me in your heart. I'll stay there forever."
Oh.
And I thought that was a nice companion to the previous quote by Helen Keller.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is lovely. Yeah, very good. And what more could you say after that?
Yes, I think Yeah, all I can say is it may be time to discuss what we should be doing for our tagline this episode. And I think maybe
right.
I'm thinking something magical like wizardry style in the magic workshop, putting together potions and whatnot. And
Okay.
I'm trying to think, how does someone talk in those circumstances?
Well, we could go the whole, Gandalf in the movies, "You shall not pass," or we could do.
I'm thinking more the curious. I'm not too sure. Someone who's. How about we talk as though we are coming up with some ideas in our magic recipe book?
How on earth are we going to do that?
Well, rather than say the tagline,
Yeah.
we'll announce it as though we've discovered it as some sort of new magic law. And we'll write it down and go, aha, of course.
Of course. Okay.
Very
Very good.
Some cool magic stuff. All right.
Before
So you
we
ready to
launch
give
into
that?
the
Of course,
final,
yes.
though, of course, I need to say to people, if you enjoyed the podcast, please listen to lots of the others and leave us a review or some stars on your favourite podcasting platform. That's always very helpful. You can follow us on Twitter at Australian Books and on Facebook and Instagram at Australian Book Lovers. So please leave us a message, like the bits and pieces. And yeah, now we're ready, Darren.
Okay, so having no previous magic or wizardry experience, I'm going to give it my best. So, okay, well, so I'll count us in, and
Yep.
remember, we're writing down a newly discovered quote, a newly
Right.
discovered law.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. 3, 4, and remember to read
more
Aussie
Aussie
books.
books.
Of course, it was there all along. Thank you so much for joining us for the podcast, everybody. Really appreciate it. And can't wait to join you again. But in the meantime, take care, everyone.
Bye for now.
This book is called The Emporium of Imagination, and I'm the author, Tabitha Bird, and I'm just going to read you just a little bit right from the very start of the story. So the start is chapter 1, and it's Her Erlitage Hubert Umbre who is telling us the story. And he says, "A little bit of magic is about to appear. Erlitage Hubert Umbre can sense it, has the nose for it. After all these years of being the custodian of the Emporium of Imagination, he would. He's 50-something years old but refuses to keep track of time. Seems time does that well enough by itself. He pulls his 1954 Holden FJ, perfect paint job, complete with original red leather interiors and bucket seats, into a parking space on the dark street. It is a car that requires a physical key to drive it, a fact he is proud of as he turns off the ignition. A car where the air conditioning system is the window he now winds down by hand. He breathes deep, arriving, bathing himself in this moment. There is a wrinkle in the night air, a silent ripple throughout the township of Boona. Nothing tangible, simply an unrest, a wakefulness. He knows that people are sticking to their sheets, tossing and turning. They assume that what keeps them awake is the humid mess of another January night. But they are wrong. Erlitage opens his car door with a satisfying creak, a noise like that of his hip joints. There is no one around, no cars, no people, only the steps of his polished brown Oxfords on the footpath as he walks to the rear of the car. He arranges his suit, straightens his tie, and checks his silver cufflinks. Then he reaches into the back for his top hat and positions it on his head. Lastly, he takes a firm hold of the handle of his dome-topped lunchbox. It is the most important piece of the magic to come. Now, things may begin. And I'll leave it there.
Let's meet again. Where magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community, and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.